We're Graeme and Phillipa Skinner, and Jim was our son. He died when he was 21. We had to go to Hong Kong because they had him out there, and we had to go and collect him and bring him back to this country, find out what on earth had happened.
Some of the practical challenges of Jim dying abroad were that the first thing, we had to get out there as quick as possible. And that meant we had to drop everything, make a lot of arrangements, sort out the care of my elderly, poorly father within 2 or 3 days, at a point where we were not in any state of mind to do that. We needed an inquest in England, but they had barely no information from Hong Kong. And so we felt we never really knew what happened or how it happened. And that's how it's been left for us, without really ever knowing or understanding.
I think the news of Jim dying had a huge impact on our local community, the church community. I'm the vicar, we're church leaders in the church, and we were supposed to be at a meeting that night. We woke up in the morning, Jim had just died, and I remember at first we thought we'd go to the meeting because it was about the church vision, and someone said, I don't think you'll really be in a fit state to get there. So obviously we dropped that and concentrated on our family. Obviously being in the public eye as a church leader, so public in our small community, but there was a huge interest because I think one of the headlines was Vicar's son dies in mysterious circumstances, suspected heroin. Suddenly we thought we're incredibly vulnerable because people are interested, especially with the tag of heroin and drug overdose and so on. And one of my colleagues said to me that people had been round to our house looking through the windows, the media, to see whether we were in. I think as a church leader coming back, there was a great support from individuals. A lot of people simply wrote cards. If they just said, I'm so sorry to hear that, that really helped. But as a church leader into that context, I also had to lead a church that was going through some questions about what we're supposed to be doing. And I found decision-making impossible. Should we have tea or coffee at the meeting? I couldn't decide that. That's the sort of small bit. But we were planning a kind of 5-10 year vision of what we were supposed to be doing as a church, how we were supposed to serve our community. And I couldn't make decisions. Thankfully, there were folk around me who could help with that. But it had a profound effect on me, and I incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah, being part of the church leadership, I found was excruciatingly painful. I'd often feel very angry with Graeme, and this isn't fair, but nevertheless, bereavement brings up all sorts of emotions. And I used to feel really angry because I hated going to church at that time, absolutely hated it. But because that was his job, he was there 3 or 4 times a day and was doing what I know he needed to do. He needed to appear to be okay at that moment because you can't lead in any other way. And I would often go to church because I couldn't face being at home on my own. And I felt so lonely because I was sitting on my own. And often, obviously, I felt like crying. I didn't want to talk to people, but people would sometimes come and say things that were meant kindly but were very inappropriate. And it was a really hard time. I found it incredibly difficult for quite a long, long time.
I think as the years have gone on, there's been more, I would say the balance has been on opportunities rather than challenges. I mean, the two have been linked together. The challenge is the opportunity. because people have talked to me about what it's like to be bereaved, and they have been more open in some sort of ways. People have been vulnerable with me where we've been vulnerable as well. So I think the opportunities and the challenges have sort of gone together. No one wants a bereavement, but if you can eventually, and in your own way, in your own time, while being kind to yourself, use that. Use is almost a hard sort of word, but if something can come from it that can be a comfort to others, then at least it isn't all loss.
There was a sense of shame. How could I hold my head up because my son had died of a heroin overdose? I hadn't known about heroin in his life. It was a complete bolt from the blue. And it left me feeling that I'd failed him as a parent. In fact, I felt our entire family life had been a failure. Everything I tried to do had been useless. And so there was a lot of beating up of myself. I was afraid that people would assume we'd been negligent and that we hadn't cared about him, or we had failed to set boundaries and these things that we're told to do as parents. It took me a long time to work through those feelings.
We've had a lot of support through the years in different ways. Our own church pastor, which is our bishop, came round very, very quickly, just sat with us and cried with us in the situation. And without trying to put anything right or sort things out, he was just able to sit with us and feel some of the pain. I think sometimes words aren't necessary, but presence is. Someone actually gave us a load of money to help with going. Somebody else gave us money and just said, you might need help with taxis. And so we had that. But one gift we turned into a video camera to film the memorial service of Jim in Hong Kong, so that our family who couldn't go would then see the service. So when we came back home, we were able to show them all these people talking about Jim. And it's one of the most special things we've got. Just that expression of love transformed that moment for us. Someone, when we got back from Hong Kong, had kindly been down to the local supermarket, bought one of those cooked chickens, wrapped it up and put it through the cat flap so that when we came back, we had a chicken to eat. But it was just a wonderful moment that someone cared so much that they were able to sort of think creatively into that moment. People like our small group in church who we meet with every week just gave us as much time as we needed to talk. And there's been a good feel in that sense.
It was about 1 year after Jim died, I said to Graeme, I'm going to write a book. And we were on holiday at that point. And when I came back, I said to one or two people, I'm going to write a book about this because I don't want to forget. And also, I want other people maybe to understand a little more of what it's like to lose a child through drugs. Because there was very, very little written down about that. Very, very little about drug loss through drugs. And I told enough people to make it feel like a loss of face if I didn't write a book. So in the end, I did write a little book, and that one, See You Soon. It was an important thing for me, and it's a good way of making sure that Jim's name is part of our lives. It's a good way of telling my grandchildren about Jim, so they know just how much he was loved and how special he was. And I wrote it so that if it just helped one other person, it wouldn't be a waste. And I'm glad to say it has helped a few other people, so it's not been a waste. And I think Jim would be pleased.